Welcome back to this week's episode of Unlocked. We are now starting our series. Like I explained to you last week, we are going into the criminal justice side of things, hearing people's stories and hearing really how it played out and the truth behind it all, because the media isn't always what it seems. So welcome, Jamal Trulove. Thank you.
Hey, what's going on?
So for those that don't know, Jamal Trulove, he is an actor, but he was also framed by the San Francisco police for a murder and ended up spending 7 years in prison.
Yeah.
Hearing your story, we had dinner last night, and hearing your story was absolutely insane. Like, I mean, it was insane, but also it didn't shock me, because I've now have seen firsthand how corrupt things can be. But let's start off from the very beginning. Just your upbringing, where you're from, kind of the cards you were dealt very early on.
Yeah, so thank you for having me.
Of course.
So I'm from San Francisco, Sunnydale Projects. It's a low-income housing and very high poverty inside San Francisco. Grew up poor, food desert. Parents, was on crack. Two of my brothers have been shot. One of my brothers been killed, and it just grew up tough in a tough community in San Francisco. At the end of the day,
just from the very start, it was
low resources. And but it was a community, to say the least.
Okay, so grew up in San Francisco, had a very rough upbringing, and then what led to, obviously you ended up getting convicted of a murder. Take us to that point. What got you, how the case started, how you got brought up in it, and kind of put the pieces together for everyone.
Well, growing up in the projects, I wasn't the person who really was like wanted to be known as like a gangster, stuff like that. And
did you view it as like, this is what I've come from, but it's not where I want to be? Like, I have to get out.
Yes, 100%. It was always the mission of getting out of the hood. Right before the incident happened where my friend got killed, I was on the show I Love New York, a reality show, and I was doing music
on MTV.
On MTV, and that was my my opportunity to be able to show my talent and to put my face out there in general. And it was cut short. One day we was out on the block, on the corner, shooting dice and stuff like that. All drinking. A friend of mine was a little too drunk. He went to the store, came back, had a little car incident with my little brother's car, and he got real aroused and wanted to like try to fight and so forth and so on. That led to some things happening in between when I thought we were all gonna leave after. So the conflict didn't blow up. Next thing you know, I look right and I see my friend getting killed by, another friend, to be honest.
So you saw that happening, and it happened, and then where you stayed, you left, what was the deal?
Yeah, so in the hood, like, when a crime happens like that.
That's what I was going to say. Last night when we were talking, it's a very different, when you grow up in an environment like that, like, it's not, I mean, let's face it. I'm like grew up privileged and white and like, I never saw any of this stuff, but if I saw it, I would be like freaking out. But it's different when from such a young age, you grow up in it and you see it and it's kind of the norm.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that wasn't the first murder that I seen, and so it was definitely a norm. But now also the norm is to not stay as well. So I left just like everybody else left. It was like 20 of us out there, just in general. Maybe it was a couple people that stayed, in tears and cried, for what had happened. But yeah, I just left, and so typically in situations like that, they want to blame somebody, right? Mm-hmm. Now, back to like what I was saying, I wasn't somebody who I was always around. And when the police came, for instance, to like, jack people up on the block and stuff like that, I was a guy who never ran, because I wasn't out there like selling dope and, so forth and so on. And the police didn't like that. And for the person who actually did it, everybody was really scared of him, and
it was one of those things that like whoever it was would be scared of being accused of this, but also they're even more scared of the person who actually did it. So you can't flip on people. You can't, or there's consequences. Yeah,
there's consequences. And in this case, the people involved, my friends, Sel Kuka and his family, and some other friends at the time that was friends, they wanted somebody to answer for it. And they were so scared to blame him. They were in hopes that by having this girl, Miss Lula Lamanga, say that I did it, that I will ultimately tell on the person who actually did it, which, like I always say, that's just not my job, when it comes down to it, to change my life by, telling on somebody else, for a crime that I didn't do.
Yeah.
And it's not my job to, solve this homicide stuff for the police and so forth.
And so from the time that your friend was murdered until the police started contacting you, what was that time frame?
So the police never contacted me, not one time. From the time of the murder to the time I was arrested, it was 18 months. I have ended up going on I Love New York, where I Love New York aired. I was in New York City. I had a image consultant. I was low-key blowing up in music and in the new reality world, just in general.
Yeah.
It wasn't until...
And what year was that?
This was in 2007, going into 2008.
Okay. And so you were in New York, all of that was happening. Wasn't until 18 months later.
Yeah.
How did you find out, did you were going to be arrested or you were going to be charged or?
Yeah, so I was in Seaside, over by Monterey, California, taking care of my son. Me and his grandmother had a little dispute or whatnot. She called the police, and that's a whole nother long story. But I'm like, call the police. Yeah. So the police come. Police asked me for my ID. I gave them my ID, and then out of nowhere, they're like, "Put your hands behind your back," right? And they put me in a car, and I'm like, "Man, what's going on?" They said, "You got a warrant for murder out of San Francisco," and instantly I thought of okay, they probably want to interview me about what had happened to my friend or some shit. So I thought nothing of it, to be honest. I'll be out in 72 hours because, I'm not saying anything or whatever it may be. But no, when I got to San Francisco, not a detective, nobody ever came to try to interview me or nothing. It was like, yo, you did it. We have this person saying you did it, this other girl saying you did it too, which later on come to find out that the other girl, had told the police that she lied, and this woman is a drug addict, schizophrenia, but in the affidavit that they made and put in front of the courts, they made her seem like, the most credible witness in general. So,
and so for the women that say they saw it happen.
Yeah.
In our conversation last night, you had told me about the lineup that they had given her.
Yeah.
To literally, it's like a scene you would see in Law and Order.
Yeah.
Of
six-pack lineup.
Yeah. Just 6 photos. Was it one of these? Tell that story.
Yeah. So the 6-pack lineup was faulty. So on the day that the murder happened, the Priscilla Lulamanga, she went to the precinct, and she had an opportunity to point my photo out on the wall, right? Because she pointed out my little brother's right under it, but didn't, right? Which I guess I could throw this in there as well. When Oliver Barcenas was a kid that was sitting inside the precinct, and I didn't discover him until after I got convicted. He remembered them coming in with her with a photo not necessarily of me. He just remembered the last name Trulove, pointing at the clipboard saying, "Are you sure it isn't something that start with a J, Trulove?" And it's always stuck with him because he never heard a name like that.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up, finding him out. And that was something I always questioned, because in the 6-pack lineup that they took to her 3 days later was that same photo, which had me in orange, and the date of it was the date of the murder, and none of the other photos had that same date, and none of the other photos had
them in a jumpsuit.
Them in a jumpsuit. And she knew 4 of the people that was in the 6-pack lineup. So it's already faulty. So that narrows it down only to 2 people that it could ultimately be. And she goes and she says, that looks like the person that could have shot Sale. Is that Jamal? I'm almost 100% sure. All of these things.
She's searching for them to tell her who it is.
Yes, exactly. And then when they finally do, all of that concludes, and they know it's not enough evidence to arrest me. And that's why I was never arrested, because now you have only this one person that's, not 100% sure. And in a case like this, you got to be 100% sure.
When it's a murder. And
Exactly.
Normally there is some sort of evidence when it comes to fingerprints or DNA, something else other than someone saying, "Oh, that's that person." There's got to be something else to tie you to it. And there was no other evidence, correct?
No other evidence whatsoever, besides this girl saying it, and then the other girl that they ended up coercing to get not charged for going to jail with a 9mm in her lap and her 9-year-old in the back and with a pocket full of drugs. You know what I mean? So
it's one of those things that if you help us, we'll help you.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. But when we got to preliminary hearing, I kind of find out her attorney came to my attorney and said she's not testifying. So now they're back in the same position that they was 3 days after the murder, not with enough evidence, with this girl saying that I did it. But, in situations like this, I get it all the time, right? And our community get it a lot of time. You get arrested for something that's probably not enough evidence, and the DA office, kind of pressures you into a corner to where you take a deal because you're scared as hell to get in life in prison. What I mean?
That's where I was going to lead to next is, what was the atmosphere at the time in San Francisco when you were being charged and you were convicted? What was the atmosphere then? You were more afraid at that time because of everything else going on in the city, correct?
Yes, 100%. So at the time that I was arrested, I went to jail. Kamala Harris was the head DA at the time. And, her likability for our community wasn't good at all, because she was just known for locking people up. And with strategies on how she locked people up. And that's using the school system with truancy, using this Back on Track program that she, kind of picked, paints as if it's to help people, but it's really a tool to get people to admit guilt,
to a felony.
Get a felony. Now you're on probation, and a felony is really considered a strike, right? We'll let you go, and now you could go back on track. But then convincing people and using her motherly, Black urbanly self, right, to convince mothers, little kids to, and when I say little kids, 20-year-old, so far and so on, to take deals,
Because and that's what a lot of people don't understand is, before you go to trial, or maybe at the beginning of trial, they'll say, "Hey, you know what? We'll give you a deal.
Yeah.
You plead to this, we'll give you 5, but if you go to trial, you could get 30.
Yes.
It's very much that way. So was that ever offered to you?
No, so it wasn't nothing ever offered to me at all. I never talked to a DA. I never talked to an investigator. Nothing ever came my way. I was arrested, booked in the county jail, and literally set for going to trial the whole way.
So you went to trial, and when you went to trial, you were obviously found guilty.
Yeah.
And when during this whole time, Kamala Harris, did she show up during the whole trial, or did she just show up at certain points?
Yeah, so the only times I've seen Kamala show up to my court date is when the verdict was laid down, and then in my sentencing. Now, if she came at any other time, I wouldn't know, because they really didn't let me like look back into the crowd and so forth. But the 2 times I remember actually seeing her was when the verdict was laid down, and then also when they sentenced me 50 to life. And again, like smiling, cackling, and that's an image that I'll probably never get out of my mind, for real. But those are the 2 times.
For a DA is responsible for the prosecutors underneath them.
100%.
The DA is responsible for saying, we're going to try this case. This is what I expect to see from it. That's the role of the DA.
Yes, especially in a murder case. When murder cases, pop up in any city, city at all. San Francisco is only 7 by 7. So it's not like there's tons of murder cases, that's, being charged inside the county jail. So when one comes in, obviously the head DA of the office knows about it. And then they have to delegate that case to an assistant DA, which initially my case was with, I think his name was Robert Flemings, right? And then it switched to Linda Allen. They don't trade each other cases off. They have to go through protocol to be able to do so.
And during this time, while your case was going on, San Francisco also had another scandal the time, which was with the drug labs.
Yeah, the drug lab. There was a big drug lab scandal that was going on in San Francisco that had to do with a lot. And I think the lady name was Moffitt or something like that. But yeah, so she was a woman that was working hands-on with the intake of the drugs inside the lab.
And this lab was with San Francisco.
In San Francisco.
With their police force.
But really just in the lab, this lady, she had a drug problem, right? And whatever else they had going on, the DA office was ignoring it all, because the lady's family was calling the DA office, telling them about, how the Moffitt,
the family member.
The family member is on drugs and taking drugs from the lab.
So the lab to where police would confiscate drugs from people and send it to this lab to hold as evidence, she was actually allegedly consuming it.
She was consuming it, 100%. And
this put, hundreds of cases in jeopardy?
1,000. I believe it was like 1,700 cases that had to get thrown out, and people that was in prison at the time because of it. They had to revert their sentencing and release them based off of her potentially being, involved into their case, just in general.
This episode of Unlocked is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. To all my podcast listeners, whether you love true crime or comedies, celebrity interviews, news, or even motivational speakers, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue, right? And guess what? Now you can call the shots on your auto insurance too. Enter the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. The Name Your Price tool puts you in charge of your auto insurance by working just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you a variety of coverages that fit within your budget, giving you options. Now that's something you'll want to press play on. It's easy to start a quote, and you'll be able to choose the best option for you fast. It's just one of the many ways you can save with Progressive Insurance. Quote today at progressive.com to try the Name Your Price tool for yourself and join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. To all the women that are listening to Unlock today, this is something that you want to hear. We all know I am a freak about my skin, hair, nails, all the things. I mean, I tend to be a little vain at times. That's okay. But in case you didn't know, this month is Menopause Awareness Month, which is something that's really not talked about nearly as much as it should be, considering that millions of women reach menopause each year. We owe it to one another to open up the conversation. I know I have witnessed so many women in my life go through menopause, and yikes, what a journey that is. Between all the different side effects, and let's face it, it has a huge effect on your hair. So many women complain of hair loss and hair thinning, and well, that's where Nutrafol could really step in and change your life. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1 million people. 51% of women who have gone through menopause have experienced hair thinning, and that's why Nutrafol created their Women's Balance supplement designed specifically for women 45 and up experiencing hair thinning that can be impacted by hormonal shifts, natural aging, and metabolism changes. So, guys, who wouldn't want to try this? Healthy hair, fuller hair, yes, please. And as a woman, things are hard. Our hormones are sometimes always out of whack, and especially when you're going through menopause. And that's why I love that Nutrafol focused on this specifically. So they now have their Women's Balance supplement that's designed specifically for women 45 and up. And Nutrafol Women's Balance is physician formulated with 100% drug-free ingredients to target hormonal shifts, natural aging, and metabolism changes for visibly thicker, fuller, and stronger hair. Plus, women who took Nutrafol's Women's Balance supplement also reported improved feelings of menopause like hot flashes, sleep, and mood, and reduced feelings and stress. So basically, women, what I'm saying is if you're going through the change and you need a little help and you don't want to piss your kids off anymore, or your spouse, or, you know, your friends, you're a little moody, you've got hot flashes, your hair's kind of sucking right now, go to Nutrafol. With Nutrafol, you can feel supported through all stages of life, from postpartum to menopause. And for a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code UNLOCKED. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code UNLOCKED. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code UNLOCKED. So there was already so much scandal going on under the administration of Kamala Harris as the DA. There was already so much scandal going on. Then your case came along. You go to trial. You were found guilty. And you were in prison for 7 years. You ended up appealing the conviction. And tell us that process. First off, 7 years, that's a long time to sit in prison.
Yeah.
So you sat in prison for 7 years, and why did it take so long to appeal the conviction? What got you to that point?
Well, it's crazy. It's like you could get convicted for murder in 90 days, but it's going to take you at least a 3-year process to try to get back off of it. You know, so you go through the appeal process, which typically takes, 3 to 4 years. And in my case, it took about 3.5 years. And there's only a 98% chance that you ultimately win your appeal, especially on a murder case, which I was advised, not to have an attorney, to get an appointed appellate attorney.
So you said what? There's a 98% chance you don't win it, right?
98% chance that you don't win your appeal.
Yeah. So you've got a 2% chance.
You got a 2% chance to win your appeal. And it just so happens that I won my appeal. So it took me 3.5 years to do so. I got back.
But when you were in prison, you sent letters, right? To all these different lawyers to take your case?
No, not at all. So
when did that occur?
So that wasn't until I came home. You talking about my civil attorneys?
Yes.
So, but yes, I did. I reached out when I was in prison. I reached out to the Innocent Project. I reached out to a lot of different projects to try to pick up my case because I was innocent. But I did have a appellate attorney, Mark Zilversmith, who was a phenomenal appellate attorney.
And when was it that you discovered that the evidence they used at trial was tampered with, and the fact that they withheld evidence that could have proved innocence? When was it that you discovered that? And tell us what you actually discovered.
I didn't discover all of that stuff until, with a concrete fact, until I ultimately came home and sued the police, right? Some things I was able to find while I was suing is that that they were writing in pencil, pen, and marker, and they were erasing the evidence that led to my innocence. Also, they wasn't discovering facts towards me, and also one witness that came to the head of the gang task, head of the gang task. Mm-hmm. A witness came to him and told him, hey, Jamal didn't do it. It was this guy. They took that into the DA's office. And the DA's office did nothing with it. Tucked it under the rug, didn't discover it to us or anything of the sort. They were like, we got our guy, basically. And I didn't find this out until we did the deposition of that of the gang task force agent. And wow. it really blew. It's a Brady violation, obviously, right? But it really blew up way more on the things that they were doing to cover up the evidence as I went through my civil litigation, not so much my criminal litigation.
So once you you appealed it, because then we'll hit on the civil a little more, but you were convicted, 7 years in prison, your appeal was granted, and then they actually retried the case.
Yeah. So they retried me. It took me another year to ultimately go to trial. I had some wonderful attorneys who knew my case, that everybody said that, I had told them that I was innocent, Kate Chatfield and Alex Reisman. And, they told me and assured me, they said that, we're not going to go to court a day later than when we're ready to fight it. And and we went to court, went to trial, obviously, and I won. And the strategy on doing so was really, it wasn't even based on the fact, I know what actually happened, right? But I learned real quick, it's not about what actually happened, it's about what you can make the evidence look like. And we came up with a strategy to make the evidence look like as if the shooter had came from the other direction because of where the shell casings were and the trajectory of the bullet wounds. Though what Priscilla has said had happened and that she's seen, she probably did see that. It just wasn't me. But she only seen 2 shots happen where, my friend had got shot. But what she didn't see is the 9 shots shot in his head. So they can't contest to that. But that is the reason why the shell casings were in that row over there. But now we came up with a strategy to say, look, the shooter had to be coming from the down to up because the trajectory of the bullet wounds was from right to left, and the shell casings is right over here on this end. And plus breaking down her credibility and so forth and so on. And that's how we ended up winning that second trial.
And do you remember at that second trial when the verdict came down?
Yeah. Was
how many days did they deliberate? 5 days.
So while they were in deliberation, I'm in the holding tank, so I
especially
could choose.
Too with murder. Because a lot of people listening, you hear a lot of differences, and obviously my parents' case and this. When the verdict came down for us, my parents went home for 3 months and then reported to prison. It's very different with a violent crime and white collar. Sometimes with white collar, they'll take you right then. It just depends on your luck.
If they're raiding your shit.
Yeah, right? Like, it depends on your luck. But with violent offenses, you normally have to wait it out in county jail till you go to trial.
Yeah, unless you could bail out or something like that. But in this case, yeah, obviously I'm in jail the whole time until my second trial. And
so when the verdict came down, those 5 days,
I stayed in the holding cell right next to the jury deliberation room. So they're lit, like, it's a wall this thick that separates me from them.
Oof.
And they're like, it's like this slot in the door where I could see just like a little crack. So when they go in and out, and I see they have on the wall, like, almost this map of like what the evidence said. And the only things that I could ultimately see was all the negative shit, you know? And it was like, oh shoot, like I thought I was scared that I was gonna get convicted again, you know? But after in the jury, they had straight faces. Like, and they didn't give me a hint of like how they was feeling, you know, every time they came in and out of trial or whatnot. And yeah, so when they finally came back with the verdict, initially on first degree, not guilty, I broke down. I cried like a baby. You should have already
spent 7 years.
Yeah, I was already in for 7 years.
And 7 years is nothing compared to life. You know, like when you look at it, like you were like, all right, I've already spent 7 years, but like I could be spending the rest of my life. And you were how old at the time?
I was 23 when I went to prison, and when I got arrested, and I was 30 when I came home. Yeah.
And so you came home, you broke down when you heard not guilty. And then that's really when the fight began on the civil lawsuit against San Francisco police.
Yes.
Or was it the city of San Francisco, the police department? What was it?
The city of San Francisco. I mean, the police. I looked at everybody like they had some involvement. Yeah. But, you know, because of how the law is structured, you can't, you know, sue certain people. Like I couldn't add in Linda Allen or Kamala Harris, though I feel like they had a hand in on it, because if I, a layman, could look at this evidence and say, oh, I see something wrong here, and say, oh, I see something wrong here. If I look at the original homicide file and see that they're writing in pen, pencil, and marker, then they have to be able to see the same exact thing. Yeah. Right. So, you know, their negligence of caring at all, or is what played a part of me being convicted. So I looked at it like that. But when I ultimately got my civil attorneys, which I did a 5-page breakdown of how the police framed me on what I believe how they did it, and sent it to every civil attorney in the country, and every single last one of them wanted it. But I went with Neufeld, Scheck, and Bruston out of New York. And
they were the founders of the Innocent Project.
Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, they founded the Innocent Project. Barry Scheck was one of O.J. Simpson attorneys. He's the one that explained the glove. There wouldn't be no Johnny Cochran without Barry Scheck. But Nick Bruston was the arguing attorney on my civil case, which was he was a beast for sure.
That's insane. So how long did the civil trial last?
The actual trial lasted about 6 days.
Okay, so that lasted 6 days. And at that trial, when did you know this is a done deal?
At the trial, I knew it was a done deal when we asked to see the original homicide file. And because there was 2 pages that I questioned, right? Which in one, they said they were just doodling, and the other one, they had no notes. And so the judge said, okay, you guys could see the original homicide file right in front of me. So I went directly to those 2 pages, and I took the page out, and it was exactly what I thought it was. They erased the trajectory of the bullet wounds from what the autopsy lady had explained. They erased their notes. I put it up to the light, and you see clearly that they wrote those notes down, but ultimately erased it, and you could read it. And then I went right over to the other page where it was like these dots that they said they were doodling in, that was in a row. When it came down to, like, you know, the ballistic evidence, you put that up to the light, you see that there were smaller dots, and there was 9 of them within these 4. So they turned them into clusters and bubbled it in to act like it wasn't an issue, which it was. And that's when I know it was a wrap.
And when your lawyer put that out there, what was the reaction of the jury?
I seen 2 jury crying. They were in tears. They couldn't believe it.
Wow.
They literally couldn't believe it.
And the fact that the woman who did the autopsy wrote down what she believed had happened, the trajectory of the bullets, the wounds, all of that, and then it was erased.
Yeah.
That is scary.
Yeah.
Because that's what was used to convict you.
Yeah.
And so, wow. So when that happened, what were the prosecutors, what was their argument? What did they say? Or at that point, were they just kind of like, we're screwed?
Oh, no. So, yeah, they were screwed. But so in this case, right, they actually, so I told them like who did it, right? Because in civil, it's different than in criminal, right? And this is the first time I'm like telling the world too this. So I knew in criminal, I couldn't say who did it, right? That's ratting, that's snitching. Now in civil, I came up.
But for people aren't going to understand that because they're going to say, you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison and you knew who did it and you weren't going to say anything. What's the reasoning for that? All
right. So I spoke in front of all of these law students that graduated from UC Hastings, right? And they did a mock trial of my case. And they asked the same thing. They said that, Jamal, if you know who did it, why didn't you say who did it, to save your life, right? And I told them, I said, okay, with the person next to you, if that person killed somebody and you went to jail for it, would you say that person did it by a raise of hands? Everybody raise their hands, right? You'll do it too, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but what about if you did say that person did it, right? And then you lose your law degree, you might get killed, your family might get killed, and then you got to go live in the projects for the rest of your life. Do you still make that decision? That's what we deal with. Right? Because
so you're dead one way or another.
One way or another. So you have to lean into what the principle is. The principle is I didn't do it. And it's not my job to say that somebody else did it. That's your job to figure it out.
Yeah.
Using me as a pawn or a tool to be able to solve a case that I didn't sign up for. Y'all signed up to figure out cases. And that's what it came down to. Now, in the case of my civil, yes, I did know who did it. And yes, my guy, at the time or whatnot knew that I kept it a bean. I didn't tell on him. So I know that in civil, after doing a deposition with Linda Allen, she felt like I got away with murder. So we sat and we asked her, do you feel like Jamal Trulove killed Sel Kuka? She said yes. So in my mind, I'm like, I could tell them exactly who did it. They still gonna deny it, right? Yeah. So in order for me to tell the authentic story of what ultimately happened, I went to the actual murderer and I told him what I was gonna do. And for him to just come and plead the fifth. So when they did his deposition, he came in and, and they knew they fucked up then because they just looked at both of us and they was like, oh yeah, this nigga, he looked like a nigga who probably did it for real. I mean, which is fucked up. But yeah, after the deposition, they knew that he was a guy who did it, but they couldn't do nothing about it. That's after then they offered me the $2 million, but it was over. It was already a wrap. I knew it was a wrap then. So
at that point in time, before you ever went to a civil trial, they offered you $2 million.
Yes.
Because they knew they were screwed.
They initially offered me $500,000, then they offered me $2 million, and I denied both of them.
If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, then you know I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I absolutely love it. And now it's October, and October is the season for wearing masks and costumes. But some of us feel like we wear a mask and hide more than we want to. At work and social settings, around our family, friends, you name it. A lot of us are hiding how we truly feel. Therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself so you can take off the mask, because masks should be for Halloween fun, not for our emotions. Y'all, I'm so guilty of this. So guilty of this. I can put a smile on my face all while feel like I'm drowning inside. And that's why I turned to therapy years ago, because I knew I needed some help understanding how I feel, why I feel, all the different things. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Savannah today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Savannah, SAVANNAH. If you followed me for a while, then you know I absolutely love food. I just do. All my friends do. We cook, we grill out. And one of the things I love most is bread. It is just my go-to. Let's face it, it's a comfort food. But just because it's summer, it doesn't mean that you have to cut out all the carb-heavy foods that you love. Hero Bread actually reinvented the bread and buns that make summer so great. Fluffy, delicious flavor and texture with no net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, and fewer calories, plus protein and fiber. And now you can try their sweet melt-in-your-mouth Hawaiian rolls for guilt-free summer sliders. Guys, this has been a game changer for me. I want to enjoy food, but I also want to be a little healthier. I need to get that protein in, less carbs, and Hero Bread is the way to go. You can get enough fiber, cut down on sugar, and add more protein just by consuming their bread. It is absolutely amazing. All your favorites, no consequences or compromises. 0 to 1 grams of net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, and high in fiber. Delicious and flavorful. The soft, fluffy experience you love when enjoying a juicy hot dog, refreshing BLT, or mouth-watering cheeseburger. Something for every craving, including sliced bread loaves, buns, and tortillas. Mouth-watering limited edition bakes like the popular 2-gram net carb Hero Croissant. Keep the carbs out of summer without compromising flavor with Hero Bread. Get 10% off your order at hero.co and use code UNLOCKED at checkout. That's unlocked at HERO.co.
So after the evidence, and then Oliver Barcenas, which I could go all the way in about him as well, but they knew they were cooked, right? So they literally called in the actual murderer in hopes that he could save them in some type of way, and got up on a stand, and he came in, 2 teardrops, you know what I mean? Construction job having, and, I low-key turned it into theater at that point, right? Because, the jury is pulling off of, you have this guy who was obviously wrongfully convicted saying that you guys framed him, and he's saying that this guy did it. And now this guy is going up there pleading the fifth, getting grilled about a murder that this guy is saying that he did. And then he walks straight out of the courtroom, and they can't use his name because that's defamation of character.
So is there a statute of limitations for murder?
No.
So why would this guy did this guy ever go down for the murder?
No.
Then why would he testify if there was no statute of limitations?
Pertaining to?
The murder.
Yeah. Well, why would they call him to testify?
Yeah.
Oh,
or why would he even agree to it?
Well, it was part of the theater. Remember, I told him this was going to happen, right?
But he's putting his life in jeopardy, right?
No, he's not, because there's nobody in the world that's blaming him. They saying that I got away with it.
So there's no way they would have
if I'm the only person, they have no case against him.
Yeah.
So if I'm the only person saying that this guy did it, right, in general, right, and he knows that I'm saying that he did it or whatnot, but he also knows I'm not going to say he did it in criminal, and they can't use what I'm saying in civil in a criminal case. Then all he has to do is come in and plead the fifth and then, dive back off.
Wow. So at that point in time, they offered you, after he came on the stand, they offered you $500,000, $2 million.
No. They offered me the $2 million before we even went to trial.
Okay. Yes, before you went to trial. And then at trial, how long did the jury deliberate on that civil?
A day.
And they came back with $13.3 million?
No, $10 million. But then the 3.1 was what we settled on for attorney fees.
Okay.
That turned it into ultimately $13.1 million.
Okay. So your lawyers got 3.1 and you got $10 million.
No. We went 60-40 the whole way.
Okay. Holy cow. And was that, people are going to look at that money as that made it right? To you, did that money make it right?
No, not at all. I mean, you can never get back that time.
7 years.
And I know that's cliche, right? Because everybody always say you can never get that back. And then you got some people, I'll take $10 million to go and do 7 years and, in prison and, so forth and so on. But the reality of it is, going to jail with the mindset of that you're probably never coming home. That 7 years ain't like having a 7-year sentence.
Yeah.
Going with a life sentence and coming home after 7 years.
Especially at 20-something years old.
At 23 years old, So, of course it helped, right? But I don't think there's a amount of money. I mean, I guess there could be an amount of money. But, it was good for me, for who I am and to, help me go on the trajectory that I was on anyway.
Yeah.
But the effect that it had on my kids, the effect that it had on my family, and so forth and so on, money can't replace that.
Mm-hmm. And you never got issued an apology from anyone?
No, not at all.
Was that something at that time that you needed?
Yeah, I would have liked
Even to this day, would an apology help? Or some acknowledgement? Because
there we go.
At the end, they never one time acknowledged it. The way that the city got out of it, or the police department, or Kamala, the DA, whatever, all the people involved, the way they got out of it was by saying prosecutorial misconduct led to ineffective counsel.
Yeah, ineffective assistance of counsel. Yeah, well,
so that's how they let you off in their mind.
Yeah, in their mind, I got back into trial off of technicality, right? In their mind, I got away with murder. In their mind, I concocted this bullshit story of how they framed me and got away with it. In their mind, I've been on this. In their mind, I've been on this journey to holding them accountable, based off of a theory of me not doing it, but I did it to them, in their mind, and it's like, if that's the story that you're gonna run with, then that's the part of a big reason why I'm, here right now.
Yeah, because that's obviously, with everything I've been doing in the criminal justice space, coming across your story and when it was told, I was mind blown, just mind blown. And especially with you are a Black man that is saying, like, these are the things that have happened to me. This is true. This is how broken our system is. Like, we both races get it. Like, when I talk about it, people are like, oh, don't you understand? This has happened to Black people, this, that, the other. And I'm like, I get it. It doesn't take away from anyone that it's happened to, because it's still happening.
Yeah.
But you've been very outspoken about a Black woman doing this to a very Black community.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where this has sparked, and you've been asked on all these different shows, and you've had the success, people wanting to hear your story. And so, in one interview, you said that if Kamala Harris would have acknowledged the wrongdoing and issued you an apology, you would not be where you're at today politically, or yeah. If
when I did the Vice interview, that was kind of like I ain't gonna say a cry out, but it had a big enough platform that I knew that would reach her and her team and so forth. Not to necessarily ask for an apology, but some acknowledgement that you could have messed up. And that's really what she needed at the time. She needed accountability that she doesn't hold, right? For what she did to, the Black community, specifically our urban, community in San Francisco. And the prison community just in general. And, that's the way that she's contributed to our culture is by locking motherfuckers up, so.
Because she locked up during her time as DA.
Yeah.
She locked up a ton of people.
Yeah, 100%. 1,900 just for marijuana. And it's not like just for motherfuckers smoking weed, You get a felony conviction. That's wild work. And then back on track, you ain't got to go do no prison time. We'll get you back on track, but just go ahead and sign here because you did it. You did it, right? And if you go to trial, I'm throwing everything at you.
And what was it that you were explaining to me about the grants?
Oh, yeah. So this is why I always hated Joe Biden, is because Joe Biden wrote the crime bill. When I looked at the crime bill is 356 pages of grants just to lock people up. So now, why in 95 on to 2005, the prison population doubled right after he signed that bill? Because you had all these cities and states that had all these incentives to lock people up. And those were strategies that Kamala Harris used in San Francisco to lock people up because you get a certain amount of grants. Also, for people to be on probation or parole, they're getting paid for that as well, because now the city and the county, the county and the state has to put in people like parole officers to oversee these criminals or whatnot, and that costs money. So they get grants on it.
Mm-hmm. There's money to be made. There is more money made off of the prison population than people realize.
Yeah. And look, Kamala was, school to prison pipeline was her ordeal when you think about it. Like when, with the truancy program teaming up with the school board, where it's like, we want your kid to be in school. So if he misses 20 days, throughout the year, we might lock you up. But really, we gonna profile this kid, which they did. When she got into office, next thing you know, you see police officers being at the schools. And this is in predominantly Black and brown communities. It's not over there, at Lowell High School, and, in this white suburban neighborhood in San Francisco. No, it's in the Providence neighborhoods. It's Balboa, it's Burbank, it's those schools that's in the hood.
I am still, just your story as a whole is you went from life in prison to now where you're at today. And it was funny. Last night we were sitting there at dinner and I was like, obviously, because my following's going to love this one. I was like, obviously federal prison is a lot better than like where you were at. And what was your response?
No, county jail, state prison was better than feds. I mean, I've never been to the feds, but I got friends that's in the feds, and they're like jealous. They like, man, you did your time easy in state, because in state you could have a TV in your cell, and you have plug-ins, so that means you have light, right? And when you create fire, so if you have weed, then you can light your weed, and you never have to. And then you got appliances, you can make your food. You don't never have to leave your cell when it comes down to it. So, and those are the upsides of being in state. And there's no upside of being in prison, either way. But yeah, people who do time in the feds and people who do time in the state always kind of like go back and forth.
Which is worse or which is better?
Let's say which is worse.
Okay, yeah, which is worse. And so before we end it, 2 questions for you. Number 1, if Kamala Harris came to you today and said, what I did to you was wrong, would you accept the apology, or in your mind, would it be that she has had X amount of years to do this and she didn't decide to do it until she ran as president?
I think it's a little too late. Obviously, I'll accept the apology, but the way that I feel about her and where the direction of where this country is going will stay the same.
Okay, and what's next for you? What's next?
Working on some film right now, and I got some more podcasts to go on. Some that may be a little bit more out there than this one. But
just continuing to share your story.
Continue to share my story. That's the most important thing. I think, dealing over the past 4 years, I've been muted kind of, because of...
She became vice president. And that was something we didn't really touch on because last night, and we can touch on that, because last night at dinner, you said there was a point in time in an interview that you said you were voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And this was after, obviously, you had been convicted, then found, your appeal went through, found innocent, all those things. But that wasn't truly how you felt. Yeah,
it wasn't truly how I felt. 3 years ago, when Kamala Harris was going for president, I was totally against her, obviously. And, I was really the thorn in her side. So, when Tulsi Gabbard was speaking, she got at her, she did everything but say my name, right? I went viral 3 times. My story went viral 3 times. And literally, she wasn't popular, especially amongst the black community, right? And she dropped out and so forth. But once Joe Biden pulled her in as vice president, I had a lot of people wanting to, do my story in a documentary, feature film, and so forth and so on, right? And get an agent and so forth. I had executive producers attached, big names. I had a production contract and everything. But once she got put in as vice president, I started getting calls. Like, you probably got to put your differences aside or something because this could mess up future deals. This could mess up, investments. This could mess up relationships and so forth. And, even my advisor called me and kind of like, told me, it was like, this is a big hill to climb. It can affect you. And so I'm kind of like scared. They scared the living shit out of me. So, the next day, I said, I'm going to put my differences aside and with Kamala Harris, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. And I left politics alone. And as time started progressing, within that year, I started seeing everything that I was afraid of start happening. People started disattaching from my project. A lot of, different celebs that I know and so forth and so on, they're smiling in your face like, hey, Jamal, woody woo, and stuff like that. But there was no true equity into, them really wanting to help me tell my story or be in this industry that is a predominant liberal industry, which, at the end of the day, I started feeling like, I was blackballed. Now, mind you, when I did come out and say that I was going to put my differences aside and vote for Joe Biden, you got the Breakfast Club, Charlemagne, the most egregious case that I thought was against Kamala Harris was the Jamal Trulove case, but he's even voting for one, I didn't say that, but it also showed me that you've been known about my case. But you never wanted to talk about it. You never wanted to put it out there because your alignment with Kamala Harris was just that much more prominent. You didn't want to push. You didn't want to hold her accountable for the things that people were saying. Even when it come down to her niece, Mina, whatever her name is, the very next day she posted me, reposted, and they tried to use it. Then my politicals, that I was aligned with, like, hey, you know what? I think I could get you on the campaign trail with Biden and Kamala. Yo, no.
They were using you.
They were literally using me.
Yeah.
And,
And so did you vote for Joe Biden?
No.
but you felt you had to say it to save your bank account and your opportunities.
100%, self-preservation, in that moment. But to be honest, I've been regretting it ever since because it wasn't how I truly felt, and I felt muted, for these past 4 years. And, I kind of knew this was coming, to be honest. And I said, like, when it does come, I'm not going to care about what somebody says about, my experience and my story that I ultimately want to tell. In general, I'm just going to do it. Because
at the end of the day, for people listening, this is not a political campaign. This is a podcast. This is not, I have always said that my podcast is going to be a safe space for people to tell their stories, whether we're on the same side of the fence or the opposite side of the fence, because we need more conversations like this in our world today of people who, at the end of the day, this is your story.
Yeah.
Like, no one can take your story away from you. And unfortunately, your story was riddled with so much corruption and inconsistencies and politicians. And you were used as a pawn for their game. And for people listening, I just hope and pray that you understand that this is just a true life story. And it's something that took 10 years from someone's life. By the time it was from beginning to end, it was about 10 years.
Yeah.
And so just have some understanding for that, whether you're team Joe Biden and Kamala or team Trump and JD Vance, whatever team you're on, this is a real life story. So let's have some understanding for that. But I thank you for coming on, sharing your story, and I can't wait to work together in the future on some stuff maybe and get these stories out there. More people need to hear what's going on. And I look forward to seeing you on other podcasts. I'm glad you came on mine first.
Of course. This is the first one. And keep on doing what you're doing as well.
Thank you.
With, criminal justice reform and, and learning, man. That's what it, ultimately comes down to.
It's all about it. Learn.
Yeah. Yep.